All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Idea Alliance webinar series. Today's webinar is part of a three-part series on direct mail simplified. Today's session is on Design Great Mail with Trish Witkowski from Fold Factory. And a couple things before we get started. First off, you should be hearing everything through your computer speakers. We have it set so you can hear them through them. So if you don't hear them through the speakers, you can always unmute or check your sound volume. Alternatively, you can also dial in. The phone number is in your invite, but also right there on the screen in the second bullet point. So you can dial in, and at the end, we'll be taking questions, so you can ask a question live at the end. In terms of questions, you can submit a question through the chat box at any point in the presentation. Otherwise, we will be taking questions at the end, as Trish has a tremendous amount of great material to cover, and we want to get through that first. But feel free to ask a question in the chat box or live at the end at the end. Also, just for everyone to know, the recording of the webinar will be provided to all registrants. So if you need to drop off or miss or something like that, don't worry, you'll get a full recording of the webinar that you can then review at your leisure. A couple other things as well. First off, I want to thank our sponsor, AccuZip, for sponsoring this webinar series, the Direct Mail Simplified webinar series, this webinar and the other two parts. Thank you so much to Kristen and AccuZip for doing that. That's without their sponsorship, that's what makes these webinars happen. So many thanks to our sponsor, AccuZip. And then last little commercial here, one thing that's been very popular with us at Idea Alliance is we have an online certification program. It's a training program for mail professionals. We have a fundamentals course and an advanced course. So if you're interested in becoming a certified mail professional, check that out at idealliance.org/mailpro. Otherwise, it's on our homepage. Go to the training tab. So really good course with that. And speaking of really good stuff, we've got Trish here, who's I'm going to turn it over to, who's got lots of great information to share here. And I'm going to give you the ball here in a second here, Trish. Here we go.
Excellent.
And so I'll turn it over to Trish, and she'll take it from here.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Great to be here. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me. Gosh, we have a lot to talk about. As Steve mentioned, this is a series, actually. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Think of this as kind of one longer conversation that we're going to have over a couple of months here. And this is the first part of the conversation. And you also have a wonderful opportunity to collect my Direct Mail Simplified series. So courtesy of our generous sponsor, AccuZip, they are actually printing and physically mailing you samples of these publications. So you get your own copy of my Direct Mail Simplified series. So you collect them with every webinar. So gosh, we sure hope you enjoy them. So let's get started though, because we have so much to talk about today. So as I mentioned, this is kind of a conversation across 3 webinars. And the reason for this is because there's really a process to creating effective mail. And, I think a lot of times, companies, businesses, marketers, they kind of say, oh, we're supposed to send mail, let's just make something and send it. And the truth is that effective mail is actually, that there's a real process to it. And it's kind of separated into three stages. There's the strategic side of the planning. There's the format optimization, where we really try to figure out the best way to send your mail in the most efficient way and to not spend any more than you have to. And then the last is tracking and measurement and testing, all of these different things that help you improve your game. So that's why this is really separated into 3 segments, 3 webinars, 3 publications. So today we're talking about the strategic side, which is so important. So the first thing I want to talk about is the thing that you need to keep in mind at all times, and this is called the 40-40-20 rule. And the 40-40-20 rule was actually established in the 60s by marketing expert Ed Mayer. And here's what it's about. What it's really all about is about the order of emphasis in creating direct mail. And the order of emphasis is 40% of the emphasis is on the audience, then the next 40% is on the offer, and then the remaining 20% is on everything else, which is your creative, your paper, you name it. And the reason for this is that no matter how amazing and creative your mail piece is, it doesn't matter if the content isn't relevant to the recipient. So if you send a beautiful, amazing piece of mail with a great offer to the wrong audience, then it just doesn't matter, right? I mean, it's not going to work no matter what you do. So that 40% emphasis, that first part of your emphasis has to go on the audience. After that, okay, let's say you've got a list of the right people. You have to give them an offer that's compelling enough for them to make a move, right? So what I see oftentimes is in mail is that companies will say, well, let's just take our marketing brochure, throw an address panel on it, and send it. But there's no call to action, there's nothing there that's provoking a response, and there's not a compelling offer. So you have to think about the offer, what's going to get people to act. And a little later in this presentation, I'm going to show you the components that you need on your mail piece. We're going to get into that as well, so don't worry, I'm going to cover that. And then the other 20% is all the other great tools that we use to, get people engaged and get their attention. And we're going to talk about engagement strategy today as well. How do we get attention? So 40-40-20. Well, as I mentioned, this was developed in the 60s. But these days, marketers are saying the 40-40-20 rule is really more like the 60-30-10 or 60-20-20. I'm a designer at heart, so I like the 60-20-20 because I don't want to think that 10% could be design. But the truth is, we now have this ability to highly target our audiences, which we didn't have back then. And so now audiences become more and more and more important. And, the biggest mistake in mail that you can make is to send it to the wrong list. You just waste all of your money. So, think about that. We're going to really focus in here in the beginning about targeting your audience. So that's where we're going to start. So I want to talk about, so we're talking about getting to the right people, right? And so we need to think about the different ways that you can segment your audience. It's called audience segmentation. And there are several ways to do this. And so the first is geographic, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You can, segment by location, like city or county or zip code or even neighborhood. You can get pretty granular with it, but, you're really only focusing then on location. So geographic usually is combined with other forms of segmentation. Because location alone, a lot of times, just because we live in the same neighborhood doesn't mean we're going to buy the same things. Next is demographic or firmographic. So demographic is really based on your measurable statistics like age or gender, income, ethnicity, marital status, you name it. So, and as demographic is to people, firmographic is to business. So firmographic segmentation would be if you're looking to market to businesses in the B2B space, it would be, separating businesses by, annual revenue, employee count, things like that. So that would be firmographic. Demographic is for people. So next is psychographic, and psychographic is where it gets interesting. And that's where you're using the science of psychology combined with demographics. And what you're doing is you're able to, enhance your selection based on lifestyle, personality, and values. So, for example, pet-loving, city-dwelling, millennial females. And there's a perfect photo right there. So you can really kind of get granular and get down to that exact targeted person that you're looking for. And then the other thing that you really should be thinking about when you're thinking about segmentation for your list is the sales stage that each person is in. So for example, you may have a list and some, you may have a list of prospects, you may have, a list of loyal customers, of, existing customers, loyal customers, former customers, and prospects. And so think about where they are within the sales pipeline, because the way that you speak to them, the offers that you make for them are going to be different, for example, for a loyal customer versus a prospect. So think about that also, because you always want to be sending the right communication. Mail is definitely it's a conversation, and it's an ongoing conversation. And so you want them to get to know you, and so that's why you have to kind of keep your sales stage in mind. And when you're thinking about sending mail, think of it a little bit like dating. I like this analogy. So think of it in terms of, for example, if you were going on a blind date, you wouldn't take that blind date to the most expensive restaurant in the city. You'd go somewhere nice, but you wouldn't go to the most expensive restaurant. You wouldn't spend that kind of money on somebody that you'd never even met before. Well, think about that, for example, when you're prospecting. And one of the things I hear a lot, kind of a common mistake, is that people will, businesses will get a list of prospects, and they'll say, well, we're going to send them our best brochure and just wow them out of the gate. And that's not how it works. You spend all that money, think about yourself. How often have you bought something the first time you've ever seen a company's, you know, marketing brochure or ever seen, you know, you need certain amount of touch points before you get, you know, can kind of convert that business. So think about that. So, you know, think about sending something nice but not over the top, and then as they start to raise their hand, you send them something else. You should really be developing kind of an array of materials that support these different roles and different parts and steps in the sales pipeline. Oh, so we're going to have a little break here. So those of you who know me know that I collect and classify and document amazing print samples. And so I've found some just great mail samples for everybody that I'm sharing just as little fun breaks in between as we're going because I can and because everyone enjoys good examples. It's nice to see things in application. So this is just, I've got some self-mailers. This is a really nice little self-mailer from Chipotle. And it's just a 4-panel roll fold. The last panel is has a coupon in there, and it's also just nice. Roll folds are great as folded self-mailers, easy, simple, easy to machine fold, just a nice piece, very simple and graphic. Looks like they got a little QR code in there too. This is from my friends at John Roberts. This is using a nice little interaction device. This has a zip strip on the front, and then it opens up, and then it opens out into technically what's a T-cross format, so kind of an iron cross type of a format. And it's got a little perf-off coupons, but it has a really fun opening mechanism and then a nice experience when you open it. This is from my friends at Stappy. This was for their Printer of the Year, and this is a sleeve mailer. I love this. These are very simple. It's just a little kind of sleeve on the outside with a simple card insert. And again, kind of fun because it hides a little something inside, and you got the little thumb pull and you get to pull something out. They also used some special print effects that had a real nice shimmer to it. You know, so there's some very nice things to do with simple formats and bright color and, you know, nice design. This is from my friends at Allied Printing, and this is another little, just a great little self-mailer. And this was for BMW. It opens up like this, and then where the blue BMW is on top, it just has a short little gatefold opening, another T-cross, just a different orientation. But I love that. I'll back it up. I just love that open and close there. Just got a really nice reveal. And this is from Toys R Us, and this was really neat. This was a larger format mailer. This would have gone as a flat, and this looked like a wrapped Christmas gift, and it was to deliver their Christmas catalog, and so holiday catalog. And so when it opens, like you can see that the panels taper, so it looks like the end of a wrapped gift, and then it opens up like this. So. And by the way, we do have a lot of these die lines at Fold Factory. If you find any of these interesting, some of these are on our site. So very fun, but I love how this becomes a carrier of a bigger piece, a catalog. It becomes a really nice way to wrap and deliver a publication. Very cool. All right, back to business, everybody. All right, so now let's talk about the list. So we talked a bit about audience and how important that is and kind of thinking about you know, who that audience would be. But now, you know, how do we get our list, and what are the different types of ways that we can, you know, send mail to these different lists? So I want to talk about that for a minute because there's lots of different ways you can do this, and there are reasons why you would use one or the other. So saturation mail is basically 75 to 100% of the addresses within a defined area. So you're doing a geographic kind of saturation within a defined area. Now, these are really good for kind of a local business, you know, auto dealerships, cleaning services, gyms, restaurants, types of things where pretty much every household or business within an area might possibly have needs or interests, okay? But there are a couple of things that are specific about this that you need to keep in mind. You know, you can target these areas by, you know, zip code or city or radius or county. But if you want to qualify for the maximum discount for saturation mail, you have to meet 2 specific requirements. The mailing has to follow the 90-75 rule, which means you have to mail at least 90% of residential addresses within that geographic area, or at least 75% of the total number of residential and business addresses. And the mail must be sorted in walk sequence order, which is the actual sequence that the postal carrier walks on the route. That's how you get the maximum discount. There's also a program that USPS has called Every Door Direct Mail, and you actually don't need a list for that. So look that up as well. So a couple different ways to do saturation mail. The next thing here is targeted saturation. Now, this isn't technically classified as the saturation, the 90-75 rule, but think of it in terms of kind of saturating an area, but let's say adding a simple filter. So you could say every household within this county where, the inhabitants are over 65. Like you can start to filter it. Think of it as, okay, everybody, basically, but with kind of simple filtering on it. Mass mail is your classic spray and pray. I think we all know that term in this industry, where you're basically sending identical mail to either an unsegmented or a lightly segmented list, where you're really kind of just everybody gets the same thing. You send a lot and expect very low, response rates. You hope to catch 1% or 2%. That's what mass mail really is all about. Pretty wasteful, in today's terms of mail, but it still exists. It's just, that's an option. It's not a good one, but it's an option. Next is targeted, and targeted is when you're targeting to the interests and the needs of your recipient. So this is, you're creating mail, let's say for, scrapbookers, female scrapbookers, for example, and you're going to create mail that uses colors that they, that they find pleasing, that have females in the images, and so, materials that they would be interested in. I think we've all had those occasions where we've received, for example, if you're an empty nester, maybe you've received a mail piece that has a young couple with a baby, and you're just like, this is totally, not us. And it can go on, on the reverse as well. So this is really saying, okay, we're going to start to get to the right people and use imagery and color and what, the things that appeal to this group. And you can do something called batch targeting, which is, you make some for, let's say, the female scrapbookers in, let's say, one age group or one part of the country or part of the world, and then you change it, you do another one, similar campaign, but with an offer and colors and imagery that relates to another group. So it's called batch targeting. And then micro-targeting is truly one-to-one marketing. So that's really considering combining your market segmentation data with commercial data. So let's say I bought a Weber grill, and then let's say, Home Depot or something. And then shortly thereafter, I get a piece of mail from, either from Weber or from, Depot about Weber appliance or other, accessories and things that are very specific to what I just purchased. It's very micro-targeted to me. So that's what micro-targeting is all about. So if you have to get a list, right, we have to have a list somehow. So either, can build a list on your own, which a lot of us are doing with our customers, and we should always be working on building our own list and making sure that that's always in its best condition. But you can also buy or rent a list. And most people rent, by the way. It just seems to make sense. But there are a couple of ways that you can rent a list or purchase a list. And so a few places you can get them. List resellers, and they're working for you, okay, to find you the best list for your marketing goals. There are people called list managers, and they work for the person who owns the list, and they're marketing and selling and pricing it and negotiating on selling the list. And then the list compilers are the companies that basically generate lists from multiple sources. There are good ones and bad ones. Actually, compiled lists can be great if it's, people with certain, legal licenses and, things like that. Sometimes compiled data is scraped, but, you want like the good data. Compiled lists can be awesome. So these are some of the sources. I just touched on compiled, which is, third-party directories, public records, all sorts of registrations and things like that. Those can be great. You can also get lists from associations, people who subscribe to, continuity subscriptions, deliveries, things like that. People who buy certain products or services that you sell, you can find people who buy certain categories of products and things. And then, of course, you can, find list owners, just people who want to sell their lists. There's several different sources so, to answer the kind of where do lists come from question, they can come from a lot of different sources. And these are just some very ballpark figures here. If you're trying to wonder, if you haven't rented a list before, these are ballpark. I'm sure somebody out there can come up with a lower price. Somebody out there can come up with a higher price. All I'm trying to do is put some context here. But let's say you need a saturation list. Those tend to be in the 10 to 20 per thousand. You're usually paying per thousand on lists. A consumer list would be in the 50 to 100 per thousand. If you're doing a business list, people with certain business titles, things like that, you get into the higher price ranges of 80 to 160 per thousand. And really, where the pricing, gets higher is if you've got a very specific, specialized, type of a person you're looking for, then, the more specialized that list is, the higher the price tag, and it makes sense. And then if you rent, you own the names of the people who respond to your campaign. Otherwise, you don't own anything else, but when people respond, that becomes your lead, and you own that. Okay, so just a little bit of info on how that works. One of the most important things to think about with your list is actually the maintenance of the list. Because you want to make sure that everything gets exactly where it needs to go, or again, this whole exercise is worthless, right? So some of these kind of technical hygiene things are some of the most important things that you can do to ensure that your investment is protected. So the first thing here is called the CAS system, Coding Accuracy Support System. Everybody calls it CAS. But what it does is it just makes sure that the address that you have is a real address. So somebody might key in an address and all of a sudden they're in your database, but maybe they typed it wrong, maybe it's not, the full address, whatever. It's basically going to validate that address and basically flag it if it's not a valid address. And then it's going to standardize the format of the address, which I'll show you in a minute the difference. And the reason for this is that if you want to get the best mailing rates, for automation through USPS, you have to use standardized addresses. The more standardized your process is, the lower your prices are for USPS, and that's because it streamlines their process. They reward you for streamlining their process and following their rules. So the smartest thing you can do here is to make sure that everything's right with your list. So here's an example of a non-standard address versus a standardized address. So you can see on the left, they're the same address. It's just on the left, sometimes we spell out street, sometimes we put a, #4 for apartment number 4. There's punctuation, there's upper and lower case. On the right is a standardized address. And then also you can add like the zip +4. You can do, there's other ways that they do it to make a complete address. But anyway, you can see here that there's no punctuation. There's very specific ways that they like everything abbreviated. And so that's what CAS is going to do. And then after that, there's the National Change of Address Database. And what that does, it holds 160 million permanent address records for people who've moved or changed their addresses, okay? And so this is really, really important because there are about 45 million moves per year. That's 86 moves per minute. And so, you really have to kind of keep on people because they're going to be moving. So you can even check it. You probably should, if you mail, frequently, like you should really be checking that list against the database even less than 90 days, maybe every 60. I mean, it's kind of, if people are moving that much, it's just a wonderful little precaution you can take. But it's, again, very important because if you don't get to that address, then your mail doesn't get there. So to review, the CAS is going to validate and standardize your address. The NCOA is going to tell you if they actually live there still, okay? Very important. And before you get overwhelmed, this is the type of thing that, your printer or mail house can help you with. You don't have to do this on your own. However, there are some wonderful tools. AccuZip 6 actually can help you with all of this. They do CAS certification, duplicate detection, which is really important. You don't want to send more than one, of something to a household. They're doing, pre-sorting, all sorts of things. There's a few different levels in the software, and you can get more and more advanced and more kind of exciting services. So anyway, great tools out there to help you. So, don't get overwhelmed with this idea of the data. It's just an important habit to get into to make sure you're always maintaining and taking care of your list. So now that we know about our list, what we're doing with it, where we're going, we need to think about the message, right? We talked about audience, then offer, then everything else. Well, now we're in offer. Now we're in message. So it's fascinating, but 95% of all the decisions we make are based on emotions. So we have to think about how emotion drives response. And the strongest way to drive response in mail is through the written word. And I love this. This was from my friends at Who's Mailing What turned me on to this. This is the 7 key copy drivers. And this was established by Axel Anderson and Bob Hacker, 2 direct mail industry experts. And there are 7 different ways to position a sale. So fear, greed, guilt, anger, exclusivity, salvation, and flattery. So when you think about this, think about it in terms of when you're about to send a piece of mail, which emotion do you want to use to drive response? So I'm giving you some examples here. Here's an example of fear. You could be the next victim of identity theft. Greed. Buy one, get one free, right? They're playing on our desire to get more for our money. Guilt. You see this one a lot. Will they go hungry tonight? Anger. Don't let grubs ruin another summer. Exclusivity. You're invited to our VIP customer event. You're special. Salvation. Relax, let us do the cleaning for you. And flattery. Great moms like you give their kids a head start. So use these copy drivers, and by the way, when you get the publication, there's a whole section on this, so if you couldn't take notes quick enough, don't worry about it. A lot of this content is going to be in the publication you're receiving. But anyway, think about this when you are, putting together your campaigns. Think about the drivers, and then you can also use these when we talk about testing. You can also use these to test against each other to see which emotions pull better with different lists. And when you're thinking about the offer, remember, don't waste an opportunity. So, you've got all this, you've got everything put together, you've got this wonderful opportunity, a printed piece, this chance to get their attention. Don't come out of the gate with a wimpy offer, or don't waste that opportunity by sending something that doesn't even have an offer on it, or you have to really think about this opportunity and make sure that you're sending something worth responding to. And with that in mind, think of it from the customer's perspective. Like, would you take them up on this offer? Think about what the customer perceives, not just, gee, what would be the ideal thing that would be great for our bottom line. It's kind of, you have to also think about it from the perspective of the person receiving the offer. You're always going to want to test your offers. As I said, we're going to talk testing in webinar 3, but the best direct marketers are always testing, always improving, and so you should always be testing something. And then present the offer on a limited time basis, right? I mean, if it's an open-ended offer, one, how are you ever going to be able to measure the actual results of your campaign? And 2, when does it end at that point? If it's something open-ended, people kind of go, I'll put it on a shelf, and they forget about it. They think they're going to come back to it, and they don't. You have to give people a limited time to act so that when it ends, you can measure it, and so people know that they have a limited amount of time to take advantage of the offer. So here's some more great mail. This is a really cool piece that has kind of an explosive dimensional page that opens out. This was very cool. I love dimensional mail. These are all dimensional, I think. This one's really fun. This was a self-mailer that opened up, and then see those little 2 pow and smash, those open out, and then there's this little dimensional, there's a little bit of layering effect and a die cut that shows through. So really cool. Technically, it's just a double parallel with the bottom glued. This is from Canada Post, and this, when it opened, the leg with the soccer ball kicks up. It just has a little mechanism that's activated when you open it, and it just swings up and kicks the soccer ball. Really fun. And this is from my friends at Structural Graphics. This is called a book cube, and it ships flat, and then when you open it, it pops into a dimensional cube. So love these. They also have them on demand at the Red Paper Plane site. So just fun to do, kind of dimensional mail. So now let's talk about the components of a mail piece. This is important. I want to talk about this because, okay, fine, we've just talked about, our audience and that we have to have a good message and everything, but, what what are the pieces that we're working with here, right? I mean, it's kind of open-ended otherwise. So what I want to do is start very simple with the components of kind of the most basic type of mail that you can send, which would be kind of a large card, technically in the mail industry called a billboard format. And so I'm just going to use an example here, and we're going to talk about some of the key elements that you should have in just in a mail piece, especially something that would be like a billboard format like this. So colorful photos to get people's attention. You know, you have this ability to use imagery, and you want to get people's attention with the imagery. So colorful photos. Think really hard about your paper that you're using. You know, Wimpy doesn't cut it in the mail. It can get beat up. It sends kind of sends a message of, you know, we don't care that much. You know, send something with, you know, with a bit of, you know, rigidity or whatever, and a nice tangible element, you know, a beautiful smooth coated, or you know, something with a soft touch coating on it, or something, or you can send a really nice uncoated, you know, that's got kind of a toothy feel, whatever, but just think about the paper that it's on. A really legible, strong headline. Lead with a strong message. Keep it simple. Very important. Copy light. I wish I could blow up I should have blown up the word copy light, legible and supportive. I've seen so many times, you know, different mail pieces where they're cramming every possible thing they can possibly cram in to one piece of mail, kind of throwing in the kitchen sink, 8-point type, you know, all over the place. You know, think about yourself. Would you read that? You probably would not. So, you know, make sure that it gets to the point and gets people to exactly what it is, you know, to your message, and driving them toward response. You need to make sure you have a call to action. I can't even tell you how many times I've picked up a piece of mail that has no call to action. You have to tell them what to do, what you want them to do. So this one is schedule a free, no obligation lawn analysis. And you need at least 2 response mechanisms. And that's because people need to be able to reach out to you in the way that they feel comfortable. Regardless of whether you hope that everybody goes through your email form or that everybody calls you, not everybody wants to pick up the phone. Not everybody wants to, you know, not everybody does email, hard to believe, but, you know, not everybody wants to do that. So you have to have at least 2 easy ways to respond. Then now we're on side 2. You're always going to repeat your call to action. You can't just have, you know, one side one way and one side the other. You have to repeat your call to action. It's going to feel redundant to you, but it's not from the standpoint of a mail piece. You have to reinforce what you want them to do. Benefits, not features. You know, how is this going to benefit them? So they've got this, you know, exclusive, environmentally friendly lawn program. They're giving you 5 benefits of their program. A clear, compelling offer. So we already had the call to action. It's basically the same, kind of in this case the same thing, but you know, again, we're kind of saying, okay, special, no risk, 3-month trial, like reminder, this is what this is all about. Very compelling and clear. A guarantee or a confidence builder. These are important. Okay, so if you don't have a testimonial, you could have a, you know, look, we guarantee your money back if it doesn't work or something. You know, some reason that says, oh, well, okay, I don't have much to risk here. And by the way, pick your one best testimonial if you're on a small piece like this. You know, I've seen so many times people jam 5, 8 testimonials onto one piece. It's like, take your best one and run with it. And then a sense of urgency. We talked about this, right? That sense of urgency. Hurry, this offer expires April 30th. So think about also generating that sense of urgency, reinforcing what the offer is, benefits, guarantee or confidence builder, call to action, response mechanisms, and you're good to go. So another really important component of direct mail, so that was a billboard type of a format, a large card format. Now let's talk about the direct mail letter, a bit more sophisticated here. And these are really, really effective and really important critical component of direct mail. And letters can be incredibly effective. But You know, when we say letter, a letter is a direct mail letter is a very, very different thing than a business letter. So here's an example of a business letter. And, you know, they're sleepy and boring, and, you know, they're a letter with the address block and the logo at the top. This is not a direct mail letter. A direct mail letter has very specific kind of components. It has some texture and variation. You can see here, there's bullet points, there's italics, there's a color, you know, color subhead. There's specific, you know, components and guidelines. And at the top there, where it says it's easy to focus on creativity, that's called a Johnson box. It's kind of a graphic at the top of a direct mail letter. And also a key component in a direct mail letter is also a PS. You can see it in the lower right in the example. So, you know, you want to remind people, you want to do a PS, you know, don't forget our, you know, to take advantage of our free membership or whatever. So what you're doing is you're creating, you know, ways for the eye to travel around and catch the major points. And so it's written very differently. It has a different feel. It's got, you know, a lot of times it has color, or at least it has texture, underline, you know, italics, things like that. Oh, there's the Johnson box and the PS. You didn't catch that when I was describing it. My good friend Pat Friesen, she is an award-winning direct mail writer, and she gave some guidelines for everybody. And these are really pretty powerful. So, you know, maximum readability is what you're looking for in a direct mail letter. So 75 to 80% of your words should be 5 characters or less. Sentences, you know, 1.5 lines or less. And paragraphs rarely exceeding 6 lines. So you keep your paragraphs short, your sentences pretty short, and you don't use big, long words that trip people up. You keep it easy to read, easy to skim, and get to the point. So kind of neat to have those guidelines as well. And then the most sophisticated form of mail is called a direct mail package. And by the way, these aren't the only 3 options for mail. I'm just hitting some of the more, some of the kind of critical types of mail, but there's still lots of other things, folded self-mailers. We'll hit some of that stuff in the next webinar when we're talking about optimizing your format. But this is the most sophisticated form of mail. It's called the direct mail package. And there are multiple pieces, and we've all gotten these in the mail. They're like an envelope filled with a bunch of different things. So there's an outer envelope, and all of these pieces work together as a team to make the sale. And some direct mail packages have all of these, some don't have all of these pieces. But there's an outer envelope, a direct mail letter, which we just talked about. See how that one has color and imagery and call-outs and, you know, all sorts of things. You've got a response card and envelope. That's a critical component. This is called a lift letter, and a lift letter is that little letter that kind of serves as kind of an endorsement. Sometimes it's a celebrity. If it's for medical stuff, sometimes it's a famous doctor that writes, you know, something, and it's supposed to kind of help tip the scale, you know, and give you that, oh, the expert opinion, or that this person says it's the, you know, I should do this. So, you know what, I think I'm going to do it. This is called a freemium, and these are kind of the freebies that you can get in a mailer to help close the sale. These aren't in everything. You see these a lot in fundraisers and things, but freemiums can be included. And a lot of times there's a brochure that supports the content as well. That's a direct mail package. So now let's talk a bit about engagement strategy. This is kind of my favorite category, and that's just because it's the space I live in. Those of you who know me, so I do a lot of kind of studying of different ways to be engaging in mail. So there's lots and lots of different ways to get people's attention. And so I came up with like a little bulleted list for everybody, just for some different ideas. This is not a definitive list. There are so many ways to be creative or to get people's attention. And some of it also, and one of the things that you need to think about when you're thinking about mail is, you know, with regard to getting people to open the mail, so much of this is about kind of psychology and human behavior, right? Kind of curiosity, you know, getting people's attention through, you know, kind of the sensory receptors in our fingertips, right? You know, something that feels interesting, something that's, or maybe something that's, I know, extra large, or something that has a you know, a little bit of a noise that it makes, or a crinkle, or has an interesting way to open it. We saw that zip strip mailer, you know, a fun way to get into the piece of mail. So there's lots of ways, you know, and you know, interestingly, there's even, you know, postage strategy and address strategy that I started to study. You know, the way that you place the address or the type of stamp you use can make something seem more special or eye-catching. You know, mail with a handwritten address has a 98 to 99% opening rate. So marketers spend a lot of time and effort trying to make their mail look, you know, like a human interacted with it. You'll notice a lot in direct mail that the stamps aren't placed straight. And that's because on a lot of the mailers, start looking for this. You'll be amazed. But it's because there was a study that stamps placed at a subtle skew had a higher opening rate than the stamps that were placed perfectly, and that's because subliminally, as humans, we know a machine did it. So you know, and that if it's crooked, then you know a human must have done it. So there's some really interesting kind of psychological things that we can do to also improve our chances of getting opened. So I've got a few, just some envelope ideas here. These are from my friends at Tension Envelope, and these are just examples of envelopes that have tear-off ends, kind of almost like a zip mechanism to open it. Lots of different ways to get people. There's an envelope called a string pull envelope, and it's got a string embedded in it, and it's very hard to resist one of those. You get to pull the string, and it rips the paper. It's just kind of fun. But you know, thinking about different fun ways to get into the piece, we get very used to our, you know, number 10 envelopes. This is just a nice example of an envelope from Southwest, and they did an emboss and register with a varnish over an image on the back. They also printed on the back of the envelope. I think a lot of times we forget that we can print on the back of the envelope and we ignore that space. So think about that. These are just very nice examples of human connection. Humans emotionally connect with other humans and animals. Note the eye contact. That is an absolute deliberate attempt to make a human connection. And so putting a human or an animal or whatever on the envelope can be a pretty powerful thing to do. Visual tricks are just one of my favorite things to do. These are very inexpensive tricks. Here's just a nice example, stay in the picture. It's just making kind of a visual play on this video conferencing product. And so, you know, they're just getting your attention with a picture that seems off somehow. This is a neat use of visuals and visual trick. This is a Mercedes piece, and it looks like the car is inside the envelope, but the car is actually printed on the Mylar envelope, and then it's hiding the Mercedes logo on the insert on the inside. So kind of cool to have the printing on the envelope. This is just a great B2B example. This is a visual trick with a little peekaboo window, and they do a scanning like an X-ray software. And so the best hardware will provide good pictures. The best software tools help you take even better ones. Just a fun interaction with imagery, and a great use of, you know, kind of what their technology does. Great things you can do with special print effects. Another one from Sappi, they did this series. All these were, you know, billboard types of card mailers. And yet they did these amazing varnish techniques and special effects. And so these very simple mailers with these really clever and distracting varnish techniques. Just a really cool way to catch people's attention. These are examples of using foil. The one on the right is a Disney, and they use a foil stamp and then printed on the foil. The ones on the left are different types of foil in mailers, and that definitely shimmers and catches attention. This is Color Logic, another way to get a metallic effect on a printed product. And this is Scodix, of course. I think everybody in the industry these days knows Scodix. They've got lots of different amazing techniques to add, you know, gloss and shimmer and all sorts of different things. And this is from my friends at Hatteras. These were digitally printed on an HP Indigo 10,000 digital press. This is, you know, white ink on black, you know, recycled paper with, you know, with different cuts, all sorts of cool things that you can do with different substrates, different inks, and special print effects. And then, of course, there's also things like, you know, laser cutting, all sorts of special things you can do as well in the finishing side of things too. And then technology, of course. We have so much technology at our fingertips. I'm going to show you two simpler ones. Obviously, there's a ton of technology these days that we can all get into, but I'm not going to kind of get too deep in the weeds on that. I want to show some nice examples of variable data here. This was a very successful mail piece. This is just a large card billboard format, and it has variable data on it, and so it was a personalized, it was a high-end menswear company. And it has a personalized, it's got the name on it, and then it also has a personalized URL on the front, and they're basically saying answer these questions and get a gift certificate. And then on the back, it's reinforced again with it's got a special passcode and a personalized URL. And so simple, but the visuals are great, really nice use of personalization, really nice use of a, the personalization and being able to cross over into digital. And then this is just a nice example of using a QR code in a mail piece. This is also just a large card. Think of this as two panels glued together. And there's perfed windows here. And this is from Ryder Dickerson. This was for RMU. And this piece was responsible for a capacity crowd at an open house. And all it is each one opens to a QR code, and then there's the universal sign for play video. So, it's awesome because this is obviously going to millennials who are very mobile friendly. It doesn't say, scan this code and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't tell them anything. They knew exactly, because of their audience, they knew exactly what to do. By the way, I saw a question come in that I wanted to answer out of the corner of my eye here. It says, does eye contact in the image draw attention away from the wording? I heard that before and wasn't sure if it still holds true. Great question. So in my experience, it's my understanding that it does not. I think that it does, the eye contact in the image definitely draws the eye and we look at it, but it also creates a sense of, kind of almost relationship with whoever that is or whatever that is. I have a very quick case study. I heard there was a fundraiser, and they decided that they always sent kind of regular reply envelopes in with their brochures. And they decided that they would put a human, a picture of a person on the response envelope with a little reminder like, thanks for helping us, I don't remember which healthcare related issue it was. But anyway, the response went up and their fundraising went up dramatically. And what they attributed it to was just people tend to take the response mechanism and set it aside on their desk like I'll deal with this later. And, if it didn't have an image on it before, and so it's easy to kind of throw it out and say, oh, never mind, I'll, forget about it. But they saw that person and they remembered about that person and what the needs were, and people either gave more money or more people gave money. So can definitely, be very helpful. So we're just about to get into the Q&A part of the session here, but I want to give everybody a little homework. I want you to focus on your list. Think about everything from, who you're sending to, the quality of it, take a look at it, think about how you could segment it, really think about list hygiene, think about your offers. Remember, we talked about emotion and the perspective as well. Okay, so think about who you're sending to, what type of emotional drivers you can use. You can also think about checking the mail that you see for the prep, not only the mail that you send out, think about the components of it, see what's missing and start to think about changing that, but then also start to look at your mail differently. Think really hard about, you're going to start to notice a lot of these things. And so, watch for components, start to identify them, and start to realize where your weaknesses are on your mail. And then start to think about engagement strategies. We went over, a handful of them at the end here, different ways to be engaging. Start to think about, some easy ways to be engaging. And what's nice about this, I know I threw a lot at everybody today, but, think of this as kind of a crawl, walk, run. Pick an area. Don't get overwhelmed with all these options. Think about a certain area. Focus on that. Think about a couple of, if you've never used a special print effect before, then maybe that's what you try next. You say, okay, this time I'm going to try, one special print effect and see if it, if it helps get attention, or maybe I'll use a colored envelope this time, or I'll print, I'll print color on my envelopes or something. So don't get overwhelmed and kind of throw in the kitchen sink and go overboard. You don't always necessarily have to spend a lot more to get attention. It can be very simple. And a good friend of mine, Ted Grigg, who's an outstanding direct mail strategist, said to me, Trish, you don't have, people think you have to be really, really different, and you don't have to be that different all the time. He said, sometimes you just have to be different enough. And so just think about that. And I want to say, hopefully I'll see everybody on May 11th for part 2, when we're going to talk about optimization and format. We're going to dig deeper into all the different ways to get the best rates that you can get. And in the meantime, I just encourage you to check out my YouTube channel, youtube.com/foldfactory. I send out a fold of the week every week. I do a lot of different educational, programs and things. I'm also an instructor on lynda.com, so I have direct mail courses and one on folding, so please check those out. And I also invite you to connect with me as well. And the other thing that I forgot to mention that I meant to mention when I was talking about engagement strategies just here at the end is there are 2 USPS promotions going on right now. And one is a tactile, sensory, and interactive engagement going on now through the end of July, and emerging and advanced technology going on now through August. So if you're using engagement strategies or technology in your mail, you can get some, a few cents off your mailings. It adds up. So anyway, I did a few videos on the AccuZip YouTube channel that explains these entire programs for USPS as well. So, okay, yay, and we have 7 minutes left for questions and answers.
Yay, question and answer time.
Yay.
Well, yay, Trish, thanks for being so enthusiastic and all that. Gosh, it's just so I don't know, enthusiastic, I guess. Well, we gather some questions.
Fun stuff. The strategy is fun.
It is fun. Hey, just a couple things for people while you send in your questions. You can put them in the chat box. I see some coming in here real quick. Just want to remind everybody to that the recording will be sent out, so you have the full recording. I'll be sending that out, probably get it Monday, if not before. I'll also be sending out the registration links, direct registration links for the other 2 webinars in that email, so you don't have to worry about registering or anything, or you have to worry about it. Just when you get that email, just register right away so it gets in your calendar for the May 11th and June 15th session. So those will be coming out with that recording by Monday. With that, we got some questions in here. Oh, and the mailing publications, we'll be gathering that list, and the publications will be sent out will be sent out after. So I've got a couple of questions that came to me, and then Trish, you can see if you see them too here. I'll read one off for you because it came to me privately.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, because I'm trying to kind of quick read them.
Yeah. So some that just came to me, and you might have some that just came to you. But the first question here is, you mentioned QR codes just in passing during the presentation. I've heard they are falling out of favor or having less impact these days. Have you found this to be true?
Yeah, I definitely will say that QR codes can be hit or miss, and a lot of people say miss most of the time on them. Where I think they can, interestingly, most of the QR codes are scanned off of ads, like magazine ads and things like that. When we use them in mail, I think they can be effective if there's a real reason to scan them. I think what unfortunately happened over a course of time with QR codes is that, everybody kind of started throwing them all over the place. And a lot of times, all you need to do is to have a few bad scans where you kind of go nowhere, or you didn't go to a mobile-friendly, destination, and you feel like, okay, never mind on these QR codes. So I think you have to have a compelling reason for somebody to use it. And if it doesn't facilitate either, the buying process or help people, experience the product or something, or, lead them to something interesting like augmented reality or some of these other really exciting technologies, then, I don't know that they're worth it. I would also say, though, it's very important to think about kind of generationally who it is you're sending it to. You know, are these people, you know, are these the people who would scan a QR code? So you want to think about that as well with regard to your audience. You know, but also making sure that when people, you know, if they do scan it, that it's a great experience and it makes sense and that there's a compelling reason to do it. Otherwise, I would agree they can be, you know, kind of useless if they're not really that helpful, you know.
Yeah, and an additional comment for me, because I used to do consulting and saw that before training here with Idea Alliance, you know, you'd see a lot of QR codes where it might be, let's say, something related to a specific model of car, for example, let's say a Nissan Maxima.
Right.
And then you click it, and it takes you to the home page of the website,
Yes.
where it really should take you right directly to the
God.
Nissan Maxima.
Yes, and then you just want to lose your mind because now you're at zero and you're
right.
like, I could have gone to the Nissan website. Yeah, exactly. It's
right.
the whole kind of pull through that has to work on it.
And there's also, this is Kristen with AccuZip, there's also some tools that you can use such as AccuZip. We provide our AccuTrace service, which will actually notify sales reps, or you can designate a trigger. So when that QR code is scanned, like Steve and Trish were saying, the personalized QR code is key. You can actually capture that scan, the information of who has scanned that QR code, where they are, their location, and if you have a database of who you have actually mailed to that's tied to those QR codes, you get their information and can do an immediate follow-up. So it really ties the direct mail piece, the digital, and the personalization and follow-up all together in that multi-channel approach that's so popular and important these days.
That's awesome. I think that's really what's needed is kind of you know, revising the strategy of how you use a QR code. You know, I think we all have to kind of rethink the way we're using them and use them smarter, because the truth is one, QR codes are cheap and easy, you know, they get people directly to where we want them to go, but, you know, we have to use them in a smart way, and everybody has their mobile phone with them all the time, so the opportunity is there, you know, and I think by now a lot of people know what they are and know how to scan them, so it's just, you know, provoking that scan and then creating a really good experience and using technology in a smart way to facilitate, you know, sales or notification or, you know, all these great things.
So Trish, that's all the questions I had that were sent in to me. Do you have any that might have been sent directly to you in the chat box? And then we can also open up
so
and ask the question live.
Yeah, I have a question about mailing lists, you know, like which companies to work with, et cetera. I'm pretty sure, Kristen, you guys also are list providers, am I right?
We do, yes, absolutely, yes. We do sell mailing lists, so you're free to contact us. We have actually a UI where you can order them directly on our website, or going to Trish's point, we can really refine and get that criteria down with the demographics, geography information to customize lists. But yes, you can contact AccuZip, and we absolutely sell all different types of mailing lists: business, consumer, homeowners, new movers, et cetera.
Excellent. And then there's always, of course, you know, working through your printer or working through a mail house. There are lots of different ways to get lists. But yeah, I mean, just a really good, solid source, and then just knowing what it is you want. I think that's another thing about getting a good list is knowing what you want and getting down to the details so that you can get the right list that works for you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's see if I got one other question here that might have came into me. 1 second. Unless you've got any that came to you there, Trish, go ahead.
No,
I can kind of tailor off on the list. The list, just a quick follow-up is we were currently acquiring a list, and like Trish said, you really want to find out what you need, and we were targeting users of a particular software application, a cloud solution, and you know, these large list vendors sent us, well, there's this many people who use that application. Well, we realized, are we targeting the technical back-end IT people or the actual end user? If it's the end user, we contacted the list vendor and said, hey, we also need to make sure that these end users have logins. So you really want to think about that ahead of time, of what list you're buying and get really specific, and then come to find out the list actually was broken down to, it was only 25% of the original that we were going to purchase from this particular vendor. So really, you know, and maybe brainstorm and with your groups, your marketing teams, your tech teams, and that came up. So that was, you know, just kind of a real life case study example of how refining the list and thinking about it before you make your purchase.
It's such a good example because, yeah, you don't want to, I mean, otherwise, right, you would have bought all of those names, sent mail to all of those names, and only 25% of them were truly relevant or true targets to what you were doing. I mean, that's
exactly.
That's such a good
and then
example.
You're at a loss of, you know, was it my creative? Was it this? Well, no, in fact, it was the wrong list.
Yeah.
So.
Well, okay then. So that's kind of our time here for today. Looking at things, but we have the other webinars coming up. So just a couple real quick reminders: recording coming out Monday or sooner. Registration links for the next webinars, that'll be in that thing, in that email too, with the recording, plus other sites of information and stuff that you can send out to you. In the recording, you'll have the information with Trish, you know, so you can contact her and AccuZip, our sponsor. And with that, I want to thank Trish for our first webinar series. Great job. Thanks so much for covering so much information. Love the examples, of course, as always. And
awesome.
And I want to thank Kristen with AccuZip for once again sponsoring the webinar and can certainly help with different things through AccuZip. So thanks so much for AccuZip for sponsoring the webinar. And lastly, thanks to everyone who joined the webinar. And hopefully you got lots of great information, and looking forward to the next two webinars coming up in May and in June. With that, Trish, I think I will leave you with the last word. If you have any last big design thoughts, the big design thought of the day, or anything you'd like to add, then we'll conclude.
All right. My big thought is just send mail. It works. Do your homework. And I will see you all on May 11th. Thank you very much. This was so much fun. So everybody have a great day.
All right. Thanks, Trish. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.